WLS, the talk station with frequent news updates, live, local, first, and breaking news as it happens. WLS.
Political Shootout time, 591-8900. My name is Tom Roeser, and if you want to know what I really think, it's www.tomroeser.com. With me is
Charlie Johnston.
He's a political analyst and grassroots specialist, and in the place of the president of Bensonville, who's had a lot of personal things intervene, and he couldn't make the show, we have
Jeff Berkowitz.
We have Jeff Berkowitz. He's very, very shy tonight. Political analyst and presider of Public Affairs TV program, and give us the schedule.
Host and producer of Public Affairs, airing every Monday night throughout the city of Chicago on cable channel 21 at 8:30 p.m. But you can also find us on YouTube. A great show on YouTube. Just posted a press conference on June 30th, 2008 with Mayor Daley, Governor Sebelius, Harold Ford, Barack Obama, a clip of him on the show, Rahm Emanuel, Lisa Madigan, all on Public Affairs. You can find that Public Affairs with Jeff Berkowitz by going to our YouTube page. And Robert Abood, who's airing tomorrow in the city of Chicago and in Aurora and in his own district. He's running. He's the Republican nominee. Excuse me. He's the Democratic nominee running in the 16th Congressional District against Don Manzullo. And you can see that on the Illinois channel this Thursday night.
We're a little late, folks.
Channel 20.
Okay, the first question.
Got that all.
The first thing I want to announce is I'm very sorry and regretful on this program to announce the untimely death of Maureen Murphy at age 56 after a long illness. In a relatively few years of life, she died at 56. She has compiled an outstanding record of public service, Republican state representative from Illinois' 36th district from 93 to 97, chairman of the State House Revenue Committee, a member of the Cook County Board of Review from 2002 to 2004, the first Republican, first woman, first suburban resident to hold the post, Cook County Republican chairman, 2002 to 2004, the first woman to hold that post, previously served on the Evergreen Park High School Board, elected in 82, was Worth Township Clerk, 85 to 89. She was a lifelong resident of Evergreen Park, a true leader of the Right to Life effort. Our condolences to her family and many friends. 591-8900. Charlie Johnston, a DuPage County judge, ruled Thursday to lift the public health injunction blocking Chicago from demolishing hundreds of homes and businesses in Bensonville to make way for the next phase of the airport expansion. Bensonville claimed the demolition would release lead and other toxins into the air and harm the surrounding community, and also that with the airline's current economic troubles due to high oil prices, the second phase of the O'Hare expansion will never be funded. So the O'Hare expansion actually would be redundant. So the demolition would be for nothing. Is this, in your estimation, an unmitigated power grab by Daily Chicago on a par with the midnight demolition of Meigs Field, or a legitimate property taking by a big city that must either expand or die?
The midnight demolition of Meigs Field was a terrible thing. Mayor Daley had no right, and I don't think he should have done that. But on this one, I think it is a legitimate taking. I don't agree with some of the things where they want to take property for economic development, but an airport is a unique thing. To look at airlines based on today doesn't last forever. I think the expansion of O'Hare makes sense, and I think it's a legitimate thing whether you agree or not. It's a legitimate taking.
Jeff Berkowitz.
Former U.S. Senator Peter Fitzgerald raised a number of important public policy issues why this would not be a good idea. He lost on that. He lost in the arena in the Senate. This thing has been going up and down the courts now for years. I think it has to be, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, found to be, as Charlie says, a legitimate taking by the city of Chicago as they expand the airport. This issue of the environmental issues apparently has been kicked aside. Now they're saying economically the airlines won't be able to afford it. That's down the road. Most of these houses have been left, and so there are very few people who are actually living here. So I don't know what they're fighting about at this point.
I tried to get Don Guile, who's the president of Bensonville, on, and I almost had him, but something intervened in his personal life. So if others have a view contrary to this or even supportive of it, give me a call at 591-8900. Do you feel that Bensonville has been sort of raped in a way by the big city of Chicago? Or is this, as Jeff and Charlie both say, a legitimate taking because it's tied with the economic development of the city and of the state? Jeff Berkowitz, this looks like the same old keeps on happening in Chicago. Former Alderman Arenda Troutman is the most recent example of a state of mind infecting crooked politicians and government employees, pleading guilty to extortion, tax fraud, and a scheme where she took developers' cash to smooth things out with the zoning department. The 27th alderman to be convicted since 1972. She was quoted on tape as saying, most Republicans, most aldermen are hoes.
Most politicians, Tom, not most Republicans.
Oh, yes.
She might say that, but she didn't say. You said most Republicans. A Freudian slip, so your Democrat friends might say.
Most politicians, most aldermen are whores. And a top official of the Chicago Aviation Department quit amid the investigation as to why Commonwealth Edison delivered a generator to his home in a power outage last week. The story, which made the front page due to the enterprise of John Cass of the Tribune, who surely deserves a Pulitzer Prize for his continuing coverage of Chicago corruption. Do you see, Jeff, any likelihood that things will change with mere notoriety, or is this going to continue to be life in the big city?
I haven't studied this empirically, systematically, but I think things have changed. I think corruption has slowed down in the city of Chicago. I think the number of convictions of aldermen, while plenty, has slowed down under Patrick Fitzgerald. And if Patrick Fitzgerald is to stay here for another 20 years, or to groom an heir apparent who is as aggressive as he is, if he is to stay there with or somebody similar as a U.S. attorney, this will continue to slow. It's not as sharp as you would expect. You would think these people, Arenda, you would think she would have noticed there's a much easier way to get your money. We call it campaign contributions, fundraising, and do what she was doing. She just was, there's no other word, stupid or arrogant.
And
in the way
also
she
running
did this.
around with some of the finest, Chicago's finest gang people.
Right. That's not a way to, to woo and gain friendship over at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So, she just did a number of either stupid or arrogant things. And I think you have to say the number of aldermen who are stupid and arrogant as this one has diminished. I'm not saying it's gone to zero, but things are getting better.
Well, I think that when you see any politicians start hanging around with gang members, usually they're trying to prove their authenticity, and what they really prove is that they're authentically crooks, and we're going to find that out sooner or later. But one thing that's interesting about Chicago does tolerate, and Illinois for that matter, a certain level of corruption. I mean, it always has.
When you say Chicago, who do you mean?
I mean Chicago. It's ingrained in the culture.
People expect it, and they say if it in other words, when you purify the pond, the lilies die, meaning we can't get anything done without a modicum of corruption.
Around the turn of the century.
True?
Around the turn of the century. In fact, not this most recent century, but around 1900, there was an administration that was running for reform, and they were beaten by the guys pointing out that you're going to get rid of the brothels, they're going to get rid of the booze and all that sort of stuff.
Big Bill Thompson.
Well, they clubbed it. Yeah, Big Bill Thompson clubbed him like a baby seal, to put it real bluntly on that. Chicago doesn't want complete reform. However, when as long as it's a dull roar, you're okay. It gets too crazy. Big Bill Thompson was a machine, the Republican machine, and it got to be too much, and they tossed him out. You got to fine-tune it there. You get to be too much, and you get tossed out.
The theory you've espoused has been apparently accepted by our good friend, Professor Paul Green. He talks about it. You need about a certain amount of grease to keep the system running. Well, you know what? I think that's been rejected by U.S. Attorney Patrick Fitzgerald, and I think that certain amount of grease theory has been thrown out the window. And I think Paul's not here to defend himself, but I would say he's probably unhappy about that.
Well, the thing that bothers me is, although I was born here, I spent a lot of time in Minnesota, which is sort of a Minnesota nice type thing. I mean, patronage for a governor is about, at most, 200 jobs, and there's a civil service component and everything else. Government runs there well. I mean, government runs in the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul pretty well. They don't have these things.
This idea that you need this to make this the city that works is just ludicrous. You need competition. You need a Republican Party that can compete with the Democratic Party. But short of that, you have Patrick Fitzgerald, who's making the city honest.
Right.
Let me clarify. I was not saying that it needs grease to run. I was saying that I think to a certain extent Chicago, the culture in Chicago is kind of like farm folks. They're used to smelling that ugly smell that comes out there. But when you get to a point where you rub their faces in it, then it's time to go.
Here's Linus in Melrose Park who has a different view on Bensonville. You're on with Tom Roeser, WLS. Linus, go ahead.
Yes, actually, it's Linus, but
Linus, okay.
Everybody makes that mistake.
All right.
I have an interesting outlook on this airport deal with Mayor Daley. Okay, I understand how a unincorporated community can be I forget the word, but how they can be taken in by an incorporated community, okay? But how can an incorporated community be taken over by another incorporated community such as Chicago? I understand they bought the houses and stuff in Bensonville, but how can you actually call that part of Bensonville Chicago when it's already an incorporated community? If it's for the welfare of our area, then Bensonville, the part of the runways that are in Bensonville, should be paid, not one-time payment, but Bensonville should be paid a certain percentage for the amount of the airport that should go to Bensonville, and Daley should not be able to take over another community. It's like if we took over, Chicago decided to take over Niles or something else. That is an illegal action. It's kind of like the mixed field deal, but mixed field was already in Chicago, even though that, in my opinion, it was illegal to destroy it in the middle of the night. But how can one community
We
take
got
over
your point,
another?
and who wants to comment on it, Jeff?
Well, I have not studied the briefs or the law in this area, but I would surmise that it comes down to looking at regional issues. So the benefits of the airport and the expansion of the airport, or modernization of the airport, whatever you want to call it, would accrue not just to Chicago but the surrounding areas. That doesn't mean that certain people won't be hurt by this, but that's what fair takings are, is to compensate them with a fair market value, not with some multiplier because you're in one city and they're in the other. It doesn't work that way. So I would imagine whether a federal court judge looked at this, and probably along the way they have, I think they have, and state court judges have looked at it. They look at it a little bit more broadly than Chicago affecting Bensonville.
Charlie?
Well, I don't know. I think Linus has an interesting point there. The owners of the homes should get their fair market value, but whatever is in Bensonville, why shouldn't Bensonville get part of the airport revenue?
Okay, we're going to continue this thing, and if any more calls about Bensonville, we'd like to have them. Tom Roeser back after this. We're back with Charlie Johnston. He is a former talk show host, as a matter of fact, and he is a grassroots specialist, political analyst, along with Jeff Berkowitz, political analyst, presider over Public Affairs TV program. And this question goes to Charlie. Rich Miller in the Sun-Times issues the latest charge against Blagojevich, saying he can't be trusted since he supposedly told whoppers about two lawmakers supposedly afraid of losing their city jobs if they voted for Blagojevich's multi-billion-dollar construction bill. One, State Representative Rich Bradley of Chicago supposedly told the governor his job at Streets and Sand would be gone, but Bradley told Miller he hadn't talked to the governor in 2 years, which goes to whom you believe. The other was John D'Amico, supposedly afraid of losing his job with the water department, but D'Amico says he's been in a union for 26 years and there's no way he could lose his job over a legislative issue unless they can a whole bunch of people with less seniority to get at him. Still, D'Amico said that he told the governor he was against the capital bill because Daley is against it. Blagojevich says he asked Rahm Emanuel to call D'Amico and tell him he wouldn't lose his job. D'Amico says he received a call from Emanuel just asking him to vote for the bill. When D'Amico told Emanuel Daley was against it, Emanuel backed off. Is the question who can't be trusted to tell the truth? That's not the question, but does the old political boss-style politics in effect since the 19th century still reign here?
Of course it still reigns here. How many of these aldermen do you see that are going to buck Richie Daley? Very few. On the other hand, who can't be trusted? Rod Blagojevich will say anything. He'll make it up, and he's in a big fight with the other Democratic leaders or Democratic bosses, as you will. And Rod Blagojevich, he just says whatever pops off the top of his head.
Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is same old, same old. It's even hard to keep track of who's saying what about whom, and it's not news.
But
none of this is news. I guess it's.
I'm interested that Rich buys the fact that Blagojevich is lying when, in fact, he has two equal guys who said.
Well, one thing about Rich Miller on that, I
have respect for him. So I think he's a great.
I disagree with conclusions sometimes with Rich, but boy, he is a dervish about his facts. He gets them right.
Yeah.
I suspect what happened. I know that I'm certain that Rich has got it right. I do think that these guys didn't have to worry about losing their jobs, but could Daley make it tough for him? Doggone right, he could make it tough for him, and if they were decisive, he probably would make it tough for him.
Well, what bothers me
politics.
is that here are two guys saying different things, and he seems to say, well, okay, Blagojevich is lying. Well, how does he know this? There are two guys.
Well, the old joke about a politician, about Bill Clinton. How can you tell when Rod Blagojevich is lying? His mouth is open.
Yeah.
Well,
Jeff.
Rich is a good guy, and his capital facts.
He is very good. I agree. I'm just trying
a lot
to.
Of facts. But if anybody talks about leanings that Rich Miller has, the ones I hear, and this would be supportive of that, he tends to lean a bit towards Speaker Mike Madigan.
Uh-huh.
And people thought he leaned a little bit toward Attorney General Lisa Madigan when she was running against Joe Burkett for Attorney General. So between Madigan and Blagojevich, if Rich has a bias, I would say it's with Speaker Mike Madigan, and part of that's here. But I don't want to overplay that too much because Rich often takes a look at the facts and calls them as he sees them.
591-8900. Jeff. The Illinois General Assembly will meet in special session 2 days this week. On Tuesday, it'll tackle school funding. On Wednesday, a public works construction bill. If those two issues aren't resolved this week, the governor said he just may call lawmakers back into session 3 or 4 days a week after Labor Day until they are. Is it your feeling that citizens are getting tired of this whole refrain, or are they just content to let things happen as they are?
Well, they are getting tired, but they don't have any choice. This Republican state GOP is not providing a clear agenda, a clear alternative. It's not as if somebody said to you, oh, if you don't like this haggling that's going on between Blagojevich and Speaker Mike, you can always go to product B. And the customers would say,
what is the Republican Party not doing?
Well, they don't have a product B. I mean, I asked Speaker, look, Matt Murphy and Frank Watson and Christine Radogno and blanking who, fourth senator from Wheaton and thereabouts. Charlie might know. Remind me. Who's the senator?
No, from which?
Wheaton.
From Wheaton.
Okay.
Kirk Dillard? No, not Kirk.
It'll come to me around there. But anyway, so they had a press conference on Friday, and what they were doing was dealing with legislative ways for the Illinois legislature to repeal this Cook County sales tax. And I asked Frank Watson, Republican leader, in the course of that, well, while we go talking about let's get away from this and what's going on in Springfield, what is your plan? And he says, well, some of us vote one way, and some of us vote the other. And he said,
that's not sufficient.
I don't have a plan. And I said, what's Cross's plan? Apparently, he can't speak for Cross, but what came to me is that they don't have a plan. And so nobody knows what the Republican package is. That's an alternative to the squabbling that's going on capital projects or on education reform.
We're going to come back to Charlie, and he's going to have an answer that may either agree or disagree. Back after this.
The cure for the common talk. Chicago's talk station, the Big 89 WLS.
Back with Jeff Berkowitz and Charlie Johnston, both of whom are political analysts. And the same question goes to Charlie. Well, I'll restate it a little bit. The governor said he may call lawmakers back into session 3 or 4 days a week after Labor Day until a number of issues are solved. Is your feeling that citizens are getting tired of this whole refrain, or are they just content to let things happen as they are?
Well, I'm going to jump in on a couple of things. I think when Governor Blagojevich calls a special session, it's usually just for show. But a couple of things. The education and public construction. One, I'm kind of intrigued by, I like Reverend Meeks. He's a friend of mine. I have a little bit of affection for him. One of the things that's interesting about his program, it would introduce a limited school choice. And for those parents, just with public schools, for those parents that are really motivated, want to get their kids out of the trap that some of these hellholes are, it would have them vote with their feet. And I think the results would show something. Second thing, and the other thing is, Illinois has a long history. I'm a big believer as a conservative. I know it's a little bit rare, but I do believe in paying for infrastructure improvements. Illinois has a long history. When Abraham Lincoln was in the legislature, the system of internal improvements.
He was a log roller.
Yeah, he was primarily responsible for a lot of the roads, bridges, railways that we have here. Governor Thompson did a great job with Build Illinois. Is there some fraud there? Yeah, there always is. Illinois First was nothing but a boondoggle. I had some of those some state people showing me what that Governor Ryan was putting into it, and he was putting in programs that were already done. It was just a cover for fraud. I'm afraid that if Rod Blagojevich got something, it'd be even worse than Governor Ryan, and that'd be pretty bad.
Jeff?
As I said before, the state GOP has no plan. They should have one. They had an easy one up here. Meeks gives them a great opportunity. As Charlie said, State Senator Reverend Meeks has come out for public school choice. That is, people throughout the state, or at least throughout the county. It's not clear what he meant.
Not private school choice.
That's what he says. But throughout the state or throughout the county, they should be able to pick the school they send their kids to. Why doesn't somebody in the Republican Party, and I asked this to Senator Matt Murphy, you believe in school choice, private school choice, why don't you go up to Meeks and say, will you join with us, and we Republicans will work with you and other Democrats in the Black Caucus to give you private school choice. So if you don't like what's happening with your $14,000 per kid per year in the Chicago public schools, you can take it and go to the private school of your choice, and there will be plenty of private schools that will offer you an opportunity.
Both you guys feel.
And so why they don't do that? Why they don't talk? I said to Murphy, Senator Murphy, have you talked with him? And he said no, but I guess he will next week. They should be jumping on this.
Both you guys.
Go ahead, Tom.
Both you guys feel the GOP of Illinois is apathetic and without any vision.
The GOP nationally. Jeff put his finger on it.
We're talking state.
No,
now.
I'm going to talk both. The GOP nationally. One of the things that has made me despondent about the GOP is they don't believe in anything. I mean, thank God the House nationally got on the oil kick finally. They didn't lead, they followed, but at least they figured it out. You know, I'm going to say something about oil right quick. Our motto should be, we'll drill, they won't. With John McCain at the top of the ticket and with the Senate there, the motto instead is, we might drill, they probably won't, which changes it dramatically. We'll believe whatever you want to, and it's one of the reasons why I took this year off. I'm despondent because we're the party that believes in nothing. This is like the old Monty Python skit, if you're serious about it, the silly party and the very silly party. The Republican Party is the silly party. The Democratic Party has been the very silly party. I don't want to vote for a damn silly party. I want to vote for something that believes in something, for God's sake.
In defense of John McCain, he has gotten it right. Maybe it took him a while. He is for expanded offshore drilling, and he's saying that loud and clear, as is the Republican Party. And so if they stay on this issue, if Speaker Pelosi stays against it, this could be a substantial issue. Barack Obama has already switched his position, not unequivocally, but he said as a part of a compromise he would accept offshore drilling. So that tells you something, that Barack Obama knows politics. His guy, David Axelrod, knows politics. When they switch, Republicans are onto something. We
have a breaking thing right now. In an interview recorded by the BBC in Africa, Bill Clinton told people in Africa to practice monogamy and that we need to control unprotected sexual relations with unlimited numbers of people. In fact, the minute he said that, the Secret Service wrestled him to the ground and said, "Who are you, and what have you done with the real Bill Clinton?"
Is that in there, Tom? Or just make that up? Well, you know, of all people to lecture Africa on monogamy, it is Bill Clinton. What a laugh.
591-8900. Okay. Charlie, when the governor cut the state budget, it appears that some of the state's most treasured historic sites will be closed or on shorter hours. He estimates cutting the hours Lincoln's Tomb is open and New Salem will save about $95,000. The cost of calling lawmakers back in Springfield is $80,000. If he dropped the special session and stay in the governor's mansion in Springfield instead of flying home every night, he could make up $15,000. But if Blagojevich would just cancel the special session and keep the historic sites open, somebody said he could make up the $15,000. What do you think? Do you think this has occurred to him?
I don't think any sort of responsible governance ever occurs to him. He's all about image. I mean, this is a guy who, when we weren't paying our Medicaid bills on time, decided to go with the all kids program, which sounds nice, but we put more programs we can't fund. He doesn't fund programs that we should be funding. He takes money away from them. His own Democrats don't trust him to give him any sort of discretionary authority over the funds, and they shouldn't, because it goes to nonsense and we don't pay for the things that we should pay. If you had the father of a family that was paying for trips, 10 trips to Disney World a year, but meantime wasn't paying the mortgage and the house goes away, that's irresponsible and you got to change. And that's what this governor is.
Jeff.
Well, I mean, come up with an alternative. I don't think we should really focus on the cost of closing something and the $15,000. The big picture, he's proposed a $25 billion capital plan, which he then expanded with the help of the legislature to $34 billion, which WTTW, when the day he cut it back to $25 billion, said he came up with a new plan. He just went back to the old one.
Right.
All right, so there's a $25 billion capital plan on the table. The state GOP, the state leaders, that would be Cross and Watson, should come up with specific projects. If they decide $10 billion is sufficient, that's it. Come up with memoranda of understanding, outline the projects you want throughout the state, draft up the memoranda of understanding, present it to the governor, say, if you sign, we'll support this.
Well,
do something, in other words, for God's sakes, could the Frank Watson and Tom Cross, if you're listening, could you just do something? Come up with a positive agenda, tell people what it is, and see if the citizens like that. You never know. You might even become the majority. If not, what have you lost? But staying in this reactive mode, my God, what are you doing?
Oh, they're just trying
Charlie?
to keep their heads low. I was just going to tell Jeff on this that I think what really happened, more breaking news, the reason it went from $34 billion back down to $25 billion is because they figured out that Tony Resco probably can't take any money right now, so they were able to cut $9 billion.
Here's Jim. Save that much.
Here's Jim in South Elgin. You're on with Tom Roeser, WLS.
Good evening, gents. This whole thing with Bensonville is really a reflection of eminent domain rights, and when Peter Fitzgerald was senator, he was able to block that action. And it's another reflection of how bad the Illinois GOP has been, because they didn't support him for his re-election, so he didn't run again. And now we have Barack Obama.
All right.
Well, I mean, but Peter also pointed out that it was unsafe, that it wasn't going to utilize capacity in the right way. So he had a lot. It wasn't just a matter of eminent domain and somebody's house is being taken. Peter said this is the wrong plan, and he tried to tell people what the right plan was.
591-8900, and we go to Kurt in Norwood Park. You're on with Tom Roeser, WLS.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
Earlier, one of your guests stated that the way politics is done in Chicago, we should all expect, a little grease into the wheels. I know he retracted that greasing statement.
He was quoting somebody.
That was Paul Green. I was criticizing Paul Green. It's not my theory. It's Paul's.
No, I understand that, and I just want to know why it is we can't expect, honest politicians that don't break the law. Why can't we expect that?
Very simple. When you stop voting 80% for Democrats, no matter who, if the devil came and ran as a Democrat and Jesus came and ran as a Republican, the devil might just get 60% of the vote. Until you stop doing that, you're going to keep getting the same result, just as you did back when it was a Republican machine. When people vote mindlessly,
I can only remember that.
When people vote mindlessly, it's going to happen.
No, I understand. That's not the way I vote. And the way it's set up for Daley and Blagojevich and now Barack Obama, we're expected to lay down because he's got so many people employed, meaning Daley. He's got so many people employed, meaning Todd Stroger. They're going to get way more people out to vote than we can get out to vote. They swamp us every time.
It's not just Chicago. I mean, the people of Cook County, made Todd Stroger, the president of the Cook County Board, 54% to 46%. Now they can live with it.
There's Tom Cross on the air, and he's got an agenda for the Illinois GOP. You're on with Tom Roeser, WLS. Tom Cross?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
How are you?
I'm great.
I knew that we'd get you.
I'm listening to your show.
Okay, go ahead.
Right,
What's the agenda? You just got attacked by Berkowitz and Charlie Johnston.
Yeah, we've got 7 points that we floated about a month ago. The Senate signed on, and now the state party signed on. It's a construction jobs bill. It's property tax relief. It's ethics reform. It's a balanced budget. affordable education, and it's internet safety and some domestic violence. 7 things, and we're all on the same page.
Well, I saw the plan, but I don't know, having read it, Tom, maybe you can tell me. What is the capital plan that you're proposing? Is it 10 billion, 15, 20 billion? What are the specific projects? How are you going to enforce it?
The number, Jeff. It's the point is we've got to do a capital plan. It's 700,000 new jobs if you do the high end, as low as 400,000 or 500,000 on the low end. It's a way to put people to work. The federal money, of course, is in jeopardy, and then it's also the needs. But then we go from there. We're saying, how about a balanced budget? How about some transparency?
But excuse me, Tom, before we go to all those other things, just tell me the number. If you're telling the number of jobs, I want to know what's
Jeff,
the number for your capital plan?
Jeff, what I'm talking about is you talked about the fact that there's no agenda for the Republican Party. Those are 7 things, including internet safety, domestic violence safety, affordable education, ethics reform. We're going to unveil those on Thursday at the.
Well, I hope, Tom. I hope the time you're going to have a real number on there, because Jeff is right.
Hold on a minute. Now you can't have all three of talk.
Yeah.
Well, but Tom, with all due respect, I've seen the plan. I don't think it's specific. I don't think it's something that the voters can say, okay, the Democrats can't get together with their $25 or $34 billion plan. This is a plan of X amount. These are the projects. These are the memorandum of understanding. This is how you would enforce it with the governor. I didn't see that in your plan.
Okay,
Tom.
before you respond, Tom, this is Charlie Johnston going to make.
No, I was going to say it's one thing to have different agenda items that we think are important to us, but to have a specific plan and have it's like a baseball team, Tom. You may be a decent manager on the thing, and actually politically, I think you are. But if you assign people their positions and you've got the third baseman playing left field and doing whatever they want, you're never going to get anything.
Okay, Tom Cross, you can respond now.
We have specifics to both of you in our agenda for action. And, for instance, on the ethics reform, we talk about legislation. And if the governor would actually sign the ethics bill, that would be, this isn't just for Republicans. This is an agenda that actually helps all of Illinois. So the ethics bill on stopping the pay-to-play, something we've been working on. We've got bills that have been filed that haven't been called. Same with the budget bills, the transparency, the idea of looking at a bill more than 5 minutes before it's voted on, the letting whatever the budget is be placed on the internet, and the same on the Capitol bill. Memorandums of understanding have been a priority of both Frank Watson's and ours, and we have memorandums of understanding we're ready to sign when we get to that point. So we believe that you've got the trust issue is very real. And we know that, but you can't neglect a capital bill just because we don't like this governor.
Tom, what's your response to Meek's proposal for public school choice? Do you have a private school choice plan that you're putting forward?
Jeff,
are you articulating that?
Yeah, look, Jeff, I think the trap we have to be careful about as Republicans is, why do you want to buy into the idea of an income tax hike? I think anybody that's talking about an income tax hike right now in this economy with gas the way it is, with energy the way it is.
Tom, excuse me, I didn't suggest
the last we should be doing.
I didn't suggest it.
I don't think you want to buy into that.
You don't need an income tax hike. In the city of Chicago, you might be unaware of this, they spend $14,000 per kid per year. Why don't you come up with a proposal, at least from your folks in Chicago, and say that money should be available to take to the private school of your choice? You don't need an income tax. You don't need an income tax increase to reform education.
I won't argue with you there, but the question was in the context of the Meeks proposal, which calls for an income tax hike, which I think is the wrong thing to do.
We'll go over there and meet with Meeks tomorrow and say, we have a private school choice plan. We'll put it forward in the state legislature. We'll work with the Black Caucus. We'll get it done, and it doesn't require an income tax increase to make your constituents better off in terms of the education services they provide. You should be meeting with Meeks tomorrow and having a joint press conference after that meeting.
Now, how do you like that, Tom McCraw?
Meeks wants an income tax hike. I'm not for an income tax hike. That's very simple.
But you come up with an alternative for him. Tell him he doesn't need an income. Say, Reverend Meeks, Senator Meeks, if you could have the $14,000 per kid per year that your constituents are being spent, they're being spent on their behalf, and you could take that and go to the private school of your choice, wouldn't you settle for that over an income tax increase?
I don't think he would, Jeff. He wants
ask him
more
the question.
money, and I don't think throwing more money at this problem is the way to solve it.
But I think you need
to. I think you would agree with that.
No, I'm saying ask him that question, and if he rejects it, hold a press conference. I and Mike Flannery and Andy Shaw and Marianne Ahern, I guarantee will be there, Tom, for that press conference after your meeting with.
Well, I called in again to point out that we have an agenda with the state party and the Senate Republicans, and we're going to push it, and it clearly distinguishes the two parties right now in the state.
Okay, Tom. Listen, we thank you for calling.
Thank you, Tom.
You bet.
Thanks,
Bye
Tom.
now. That was Tom Cross, the state Republican leader. We go to Bill in North Aurora. You're on with Tom Roeser, WLS.
Hi, Tom. Here's one of the problems with the Republican Party. At least the Democrats give us a number of what their plan is. Tom Cross doesn't even give us a number. Republicans throughout the state and throughout the country are teed off at the lack of fiscal responsibility. And Tom Cross can't even give you a number. How can we trust him?
Okay, now before anybody comments, I got to go to break. So the first guy is going to comment is Jeff. Stay on the line. Back after this.
WLS. Do you ever have one of those days where everything...
We're back. Charlie, why don't you answer the gentleman, Bill in North Aurora, quickly?
Now it's on. I appreciate his point. You come out with a plan that doesn't have specifics. Tom says we'll come up with the specifics at the right time.
Tom Cross?
Right,
Yeah.
Tom Cross. Look, guys, we're way behind. 3 months to election. Now is the right time.
Okay, both of you guys, who is right? Carol Marine in the Sun-Times writes a puff piece saying that the close poll numbers between Obama and McCain mean nothing, quoting an objective source, David Axelrod. Eric Zorn in the Tribune says that if the election ends on who Obama is rather than the issues, Obama will lose. Jeff?
Anybody taking an objective look at this says the race is narrowing. The polls are narrowing on the national level. It's a statistical tie. If you look at state by state where you got to count electoral votes, Obama's ahead. He's winning more states by the number of electoral votes, something like 260 to 180. It's not a one election yet, but many of those states are quite close, whether you're talking Ohio, Florida,
So who's
Michigan.
right?
So, well, Marine is not. The race is getting closer. It is ridiculous for anybody to quote David Axelrod as saying, "Oh my gosh, it doesn't mean anything." What the hell did she expect David Axelrod to say?
If he didn't, he'd be out of work.
Well,
Charlie.
how many years? Has it been 2 decades since Carol Moran had an original objective thought?
Okay, here's another one. And both you guys, what can we learn from the John Edwards issue? In your estimation, was the John Edwards issue a one-day story able to detract and distract from the presidential campaign? Go ahead.
I think it illustrates the problem with the media's love affair with Obama. Republicans jaywalk, they treat it as murder, or a Democrat commits murder, and they treat it as jaywalking.
It's not Obama. This is Democrats in general. Look, this thing came out through the National Enquirer. It then went to the LA Times blog, to several other mainstream blogs. Then it went to Fox News. Then it turns out the National Enquirer was right at least on half of it, maybe more. And the mainstream media should hang their heads in shame. He was enough of a public figure where they should have covered it long ago.
Okay, and with that, we are delighted that you both guys were here. Your checks will be in the mail, as usual. My name is Tom Roeser, and I'll see you next Sunday at this time. Stay tuned for Bill Cunningham.